I know you guys, I don't look like Brent Gove today, but Brent had an event that he needed to attend. I'm stepping in. Brent and I go way back. He and I were team leaders with Keller Williams in the same market center, which was Roseville. And we've been long respected colleagues since then. And so I have had some success recruiting that Roseville office that Brent and I were a part of. I built from 10 agents to 184 in 27 months. And then I went on to launch 9 more Keller Williams franchises successfully. So we did 10 in total from the ground up. And I think that's a record within Keller Williams. So I am quite comfortable recruiting, attracting, and retaining talent. And so James had asked me to step in for Brent, and I asked Sheldon Steele, a member of my team, come on over here, Sheldon. What Sheldon and I are going to do is we're going to be interacting on some best practices in terms of attraction. And we would love for you guys to bring us your questions, your comments, and the best way for you to do that is to put your question in the chat box. And once I address the question, if it's something you want us to role play, we can do that as well, right? So typically, people will want to know, how do I approach my sphere when I join and I'm trying to do an attraction call, or what is a good practice for attraction, or how do I build an event? You give us whatever questions that you have or whatever objections that you're encountering, put them in the chat box, and then we'll go. But in the meanwhile, what I want to do is I want to talk to Sheldon about his experience. Hey, Andre, awesome to see you in the house, buddy. Andre was in my Keller Williams office back in the day, and he is an awesome bike rider. Don't challenge him to a race. At any rate, Sheldon, would you talk about your experience being approached, in your case, by Doug Grace? What was his communication to you? And then I know we ended up meeting, but why don't you just talk about your process of being recruited? Because, after all, you were an independent broker. You were running a brokerage that had a 40-plus year legacy in your market. You're getting 100%. You also were an successful investor, yet you chose to join us at EXP. Would you explain why that was the case?
And it was 52 years, by the way.
Oh, wow.
But so I was originally approached by Gove, and at first, I kind of wanted to just blow it off, to be honest. But the thing that caught my eye is Doug just approached it from a very personable, kind of relaxed attack. And I knew what Doug had walked away from. So I said, hey, look, it's you. Because it's you, I'll listen. But I'm just going to tell you right now, I don't think I'm very interested.
Hey, Don, we are getting...
That better now? There we go. So Doug had made the call, and I said, look, all right, I'll take a look at it. Because it's you. And of course, Doug texted me over the video. I watched the video, and as the old saying goes, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So, my curiosity was piqued at that point. And I believe it was after that that he had set me up on a phone call. I believe it was a call with you, actually, Don. And then you and I had a pretty good discussion. And then actually following that, he just never dropped the ball. He wouldn't let me leave an appointment without another appointment. So I found myself on the phone with Randy Bird. And, Randy, I'll be honest, Randy and I didn't have, probably the best conversation. But after that, Doug had followed up, and I believe that's when you had came down to Sacramento and arranged for a meeting for you and I to meet face to face.
Well, what I want you guys to hear there, and maybe you should mute while I'm speaking, Sheldon, is that Doug originally approached Sheldon, who they work in the same market, by the way, both very successful agents. I think Sheldon did a little over 20 million last year, and that year Doug had made 700,000, half of which was from flipping and the other half from his personal production. So these guys were really getting it on. Obviously competitive, but with a competitive mutual respect. And it sounds like the approach that Doug took with you was assertive, but not overly aggressive. And then he got you on the phone with me, positive experience. And then, of course, I've trained all my guys. And if there's one thing that you can take out of this communication today is, if you're going to be successful in attraction, do not leave the scene of an interaction without another appointment. Okay? What happens if you don't make another appointment is that you very likely will lose momentum in the recruiting cycle. And so I want you to notice how Sheldon is saying, Doug had the call, then he made a call with me, then he did it with Randy, and then from the call with Randy, he got Sheldon back to me for then an in-person meeting. Now, the other thing I want you to hear is that each step was a progression in the communication, right? Doug is in my organization under Tom Daves, and then I, after my call, we got Sheldon to Randy Bird, who is my sponsor. And so we kept going up line in order to give Sheldon more of a perspective of the resources within our team. And then moving to an in-person from a call is a progression. So if you just think about what is a progression or a regression, so a email would be lowest level. Text would be a progression. Text to phone call, progression. Phone call to a Zoom call, progression. Zoom call to an event, progression. Event to an independent to a one-on-one, a progression. One-on-one to a phone call, regression. Okay, and so ideally, you want to be having these progressive communications and close. And you want to continue those as long as the person is willing to continue in due diligence. And if you have identified the right prospect, one of the things that will happen is they will join. Because the value proposition of EXP in the marketplace today is so vastly superior to anything else for the right people that it's just not a contest. And so if people are not joining you, it's one of two things. They're either A, not a fit, or B, they haven't done their due diligence. So let's pick it up there, Sheldon. We met in person, talked about that meeting and where we went from there.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I might even jump in there for a minute because you mentioned the value proposition in itself. And, when I had looked at the model originally, I instantly recognized the potential and kind of like you tapped on it before. I mean, I was at 100% myself as owning my own brokerage. Plus I had agents I was making money off of. So it was when I sat down and really did the math on it, I was going, okay, year one is probably a $50,000 to $60,000 loss for me by making this move. But I could see the potential there. So I, after quite a few discussions, realized, okay, this is worth the opportunity. And if I'm going to bet on anybody, I'm going to bet on myself. So I went ahead and pulled the trigger and did it. Now that what I projected is a 50 to 60K loss actually probably ended up being about a 40 to 50K gain. So that tells you, just something about the power of EXP itself. And I think probably the collaboration aspect of, re-engaging myself in the business and now having access to people that I didn't beforehand. But so to go back to your question there, yeah, I mean, we had a fantastic meeting, together there in person. I think it was right there at Bella Brew up in Natomas as you were racing back to get to the airport. But it went from that meeting, you and I had a great discussion, and you kind of outlined the math side of it, which is what got me and drove my decision making. And I think you were able to hone in on what I wanted to accomplish and then lay out the path of how I could do so. And that, I think made it much more tangible in my decision process.
Awesome. I do, though, want to say one of the things that probably enabled us to get that far with you was that Doug Grace also had an independent broker like you. In fact, he had to let 4 agents go in order to join us, right? So you knew him to be an intelligent person, and you probably were kind of wondering, well, he had 100% and he had agents he was overriding, and he chose to align himself with EXP. There's probably something more to this than I'm even realizing. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. And much like Doug, I actually had some agents that I let go as well, too. Kind of started from ground zero when I made the transition. But yeah, knowing, who Doug was, what he accomplished, his mindset definitely played an influence. But, I think even furthermore than that, it was, Doug sat down, and I vividly remember him telling me about a few opportunities he had missed in life prior. And he said, look, I'm, in much more colorful language, I am not missing out on this one. And he probably led me into it a little degree too of, when he did send me the video, I had probably almost started that potential recruiting process without even knowing it at that time. And one of the very first things I did is I sent the video to my dad prior to joining. And, my dad had ran our business for 30 plus years and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing something crazy. I want your opinion. Can you give me some insight? Just give it to me honestly. Am I nuts? And so I sent it to him, made him watch it. And the very first thing he said when he came back to me was, I think I might come out of retirement. So that's when I knew we were on to something.
I want to speak to that because you are now shedding light on a strategy that Brent Gove used when he joined the company, which obviously led to incredible success. Before I do, though, I just want to say this is not just about Sheldon and I up here presenting to you guys. I want you guys to ask questions, give us your objections so that we have something to work with. So I love that a lot of you are in the front row, but I want some questions for us to work with, and we've got 15 minutes, so let's get on it. Now, that being said, I want to talk to what Sheldon just shared. Sheldon, remember, was part of this 52-year legacy that had been built with his brokerage. And he went to his dad for counsel and asked him for his advice. And one of the things that Brent did, just like that, when he joined, and whenever you have someone joining you now, I want you to use the same strategy, is you've got somebody that is psychologically prepared to make the move. And I'm guessing, Sheldon, correct me if I'm wrong, that when you went to your dad, you were pretty much there, but you just kind of wanted his validation. Is that roughly correct?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely it. I was there, right? But it was more so of, wanting the validation, the blessing, whatever you want to call it.
Okay. So what, you guys will love this. So Brent calls me. And remember, Brent and I go way back. I had been the original team leader at that Keller Williams office. I had tried to get Brent over from RE/MAX. At that time, he was like the #1 RE/MAX agent in the state of California. I wasn't able to. Maureen Barker ended up getting him after, but we did have a very high level of mutual respect. And so when Brent called me, he called as though he were asking for my counsel because he knew I had gone before him as a team leader in that office. And so the call went something like, Don, hey, this is Brent Gove. How you doing? And of course, if it's Brent, it's going to be super high energy. But so great energy into the call and genuine. And then, Don, I know I've been at KW for 8 years and I'm thinking of making a move. And I would really appreciate your opinion on what I'm about to do. There's a company, I'm sure you haven't heard of them, but it's called EXP, and they've presented me with a business model that looks compelling to me, but I just don't know that I know enough about brokerages to really honestly evaluate it. And I know that you've built 10 brokerages from the ground up. Would you please take a look at this thing and just make sure I'm not doing something crazy here? Well, first of all, I love Brent, so I'm going to do that anyway. But, here he is paying me a nice compliment. And so, and I knew Brent was trying to recruit me, okay, you guys? But at the same time, he was sincere asking for my advice. And I did study. I watched the presentation twice. And I came back to Brent. And interestingly enough, I came back and what I told him at that time was, I says, well, Brent, knowing who you are, I'm very confident you're going to succeed in this model. I will tell you the timing for me is not right because I've just made a commitment to another opportunity in the Northwest. But I will say that it almost seems too good to be true. That was the comment that I made to Brent, okay? And of course, the rest is history. Brent went on and he did it. Turned out not to be too good to be true, but it turned out to be better than we all expected. That's for certain. At any rate, Brent was able to get 8 of the top leaders in the country to align with him with that particular strategy. And so if you are relatively new to the company or you haven't tried that approach yet, I certainly encourage you to follow in Brent's footsteps and do what he did, because it worked really, really well. Even though it didn't get me at that time, obviously I did join at a later date. Brent did follow up and call me once he was making $100,000 a month. And I remember going to my wife and saying, that EXP thing I had told you about, well, Brent's now making $100,000 a month. Maybe I need to take a more serious look at it. So I did, and then I reached out to Gene Frederick, who's on the board. He and I had partnered on Keller Williams offices, one in Cupertino, one in Palo Alto. And Gene had been a CPA in his past, and I knew he was a numbers guy, and I knew he was on the board at EXP, and he helped me to understand the model. And what I came to learn was not only was the model sustainable, but what they had done is they had stripped out of the model the costs that did not add value to the consumer. And in doing so, and I'm talking about the bricks and mortar, the staff, the equipment that would normally be associated with a bricks and mortar operation, because of that, they were able to get a competitive compensation plan. They were able to provide an ownership opportunity to the agents, and they were able to share revenue. And what I realized as I looked further was that when Brent joined, they had something like 2,200 agents. They were already cash flow positive. They weren't profitable on a GAAP accounting perspective, but they were cash flow positive. And so that was a telling thing to me. When I joined, by the way, when I had that conversation with Gene Frederick, they were adding $2 million a month to the balance sheet. And that was with 10,600 agents 2 years ago. I just celebrated my 2-year anniversary. Well, now they're adding about $5 million a month to the balance sheet. But here's something that's interesting. With my KW franchises, If I had seen a 25% decline in revenue, that would have taken a nominally profitable operation into break even or even perhaps not for profit. But as I just described to you, if we had a catastrophic event in real estate and half of the 32,000 EXP agents were to vanquish tomorrow, first of all, it wouldn't be the top half, right? It would most likely be the bottom half. So we'd have a top grading in that as well. But we'd have 16,000 agents. We'd have 5,400 more than when I joined, when they were adding $2 million to the balance sheet. Now, mind you, when I joined, they had 352 employees. Today, I think they have more than 650, so they'd have to right size their staff. That would take them maybe 90 days. My point is, this model, I'm not going to say it's bulletproof, but it is so much more durable than any bricks and mortar model out there. And because adjusting to, like now, especially during COVID, we know that you don't have to have an office in order to do transactions, because we've all learned to do them without. And the rest of the industry has now, by the way, as well. But what we have with our model is we have a cost structure which is the envy of the industry. And it's not that the other companies don't know how to do that, it's that they're stuck in these leases. And think of it like we're all trying to climb Everest together, but they're carrying an 80-pound back and we've got a camel back, right? It's just we have a lot lower load burdening us as we travel this real estate journey. Of course, right now, interest rates are at record lows and we're seeing incredible inventory. I mean, incredible activity. But boy, I'll tell you, in a year from now, I'm expecting a pretty good correction in the market. And so those independent brokers, now Sheldon joined us actually when he was prospering. And he's a $20 million a year producer, by the way, as well. So it's not like he's hurting for money. It's just that I believe, Sheldon, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what you saw with EXP was a way, because in a privately held brokerage, you don't really, even though you have ownership, you don't have a sellable stock. And then you don't really have the ability to scale. Were those some of the hot buttons for you, or was it something else?
No, I think scale is the biggest word there, because I was making a very good living. However, I still had a desire for growth and more. And every time I started contemplating growth with the brokerage itself, is there was two big things that kept popping up. Was okay, how am I going to build the back end of everything now? Because as I scale it, I need to worry about that. And there was, obviously a significant amount of time and expense involved in that. And then the liability aspect as well. So, as I did the math on it, it was going to be a pretty large undertaking. And a big factor for me too, is it was going to take time away from my family. And that's something that's very important to me. And I'm not one who's afraid to leave money on the table to spend more time with my family. So, when I did see the EXP model, what it provided now was that opportunity for that growth, except now I'm not responsible to build the back end. EXP is doing that for me, and I can just go out and perform. So, it really was probably the perfect solution at the perfect time. And, frankly, now a year and a half into it, just like everybody else, I wish I would have known sooner. But, it was the opportunity of being able to grow, to expand and do that. Now I've got agents from here and agents in Florida. And, that's something that wasn't achievable prior.
Right. Yeah, and by the way, I think that agent in Florida who we love, Lisa, that was a referral from your dad, right? So because you did your due diligence with your dad, he ended up introducing you to her.
It absolutely was. And going back on that strategy a little bit too, obviously most everybody in this room, I'm assuming is already here or been here for a little bit of time, but that strategy is great, and I wish I would have used it more in the beginning, but that doesn't mean that it still can't be used, right? It's a great tool as far as driving deep when you do bring new agents on to the platform, is helping them employ that strategy as well, because it is very effective.
Absolutely. Hey, and we did get a question for you from Nate. He's asking, what was your exit plan prior to EXP? I'm guessing it was investing, but why don't you share?
Yeah, no, it was just, the acquisition of single family rentals. And, I when I sat down with you, Don, and played out, okay, this is kind of the number I would want, when I could finally step out of this business and do so with a smile on my face. And, that was kind of some of what we laid out is, hey, continue with the production, build up the rev share side of things, take that rev share money, put that into another account, and use that to acquire the single family rentals. And then by the time, you throttle off a little bit, now you've got this ballooning rev share, plus you have the tangible asset of, the real estate paying you every month too. So, that was the exit plan. It's just now, thankfully that has been, it's like we put nitrous into the motor on it now.
Well, and by the way, I think that you still consider investing a really valid way of creating wealth. It's just, I think you also recognize that we are coming to the end of the economic cycle of appreciation. So going heavy in your real estate holdings at the end of a cycle can be a little precarious. And so this was a way, I think, of also maybe mitigating some of that risk and creating a secondary source of recurring income. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Anytime you can add another revenue stream, you do so. So yeah, that's absolutely true.
Okay. So here's what we're going to do now. We got another question is, how could we approach someone like you if we didn't know you? First of all, I want to point out that Sheldon and I did not know each other before we got into business together in EXP. And I'm going to tell you guys a funny story about Veronica Figueroa, who I interviewed this week. But what I want you to see is I'm going to role play with Sheldon as though I were calling an independent broker, which he was. And again, Sheldon, I certainly knew of Steele's name. I didn't know Sheldon personally, and Sheldon may have known of my name, but maybe not. And so, you ready to go, Sheldon?
Yeah, and I was going to say, Don, I had no clue who you were, but it goes back to it that, Doug did an excellent job of edifying you, during our conversation and really giving me a desire and a need to talk to you.
Okay, perfect. So here we go. So ring, ring, ring.
Hello?
Hi, is this Sheldon?
Yes, this is him.
Hi, Sheldon. This is Don Yoakum. I'm calling you about your independent brokerage in Elk Grove, Steele Realty.
Yeah, what can I help you with, Don?
Well, I know that you've got a tremendous legacy and you're known to be a top producer yourself. I'm just curious if you've ever looked at scaling your brand outside of your market area there.
It's always been a thought, but, I do appreciate the time here, Don, but, what do you have for me? I just don't have a lot of time to waste right now.
Absolutely. And maybe I should back up. Can you tell me a little bit about your brokerage now? I presume you have some other agents working in it.
Yeah. We just kind of keep it lean and mean it, at the point being, it seems to work well for us and, probably got a few too many agents that don't need to make money.
Yeah, well, don't feel bad about that. I think that's pretty common in any brokerage. If you could wave your magic wand, would you like to have 100, a couple hundred, maybe even 1,000 productive agents that you are earning revenue on?
Yeah, absolutely. As long as I don't have to babysit them all.
Well, and Sheldon, I'll share with you that I've built brokerages like yours. I built 10, and and that was a good experience for me, although each of those encompassed coming up with a significant amount of capital, having broker liability, and capital risk. And even though that was a relatively successful operation, what I found was each of those franchises was pretty landlocked. And I could recruit an agent up to about 20 minutes away. And then if I did persuade someone to join me further from that, I would just suffer from massive attrition. And so I'm reaching out to you on behalf of EXP because you're a well-respected real estate professional that I believe could scale a regional and then eventually even a national organization with our help. If I know I've called you out of the blue and you're short of time today, but would it be possible for us to perhaps have a call on Wednesday or Thursday to help you to understand how you might be able to grow your sales organization?
Yeah, I'd be willing to take a look at it. I've looked at some possible, franchise opportunities in the past, but I'd be willing to take a few minutes and just listen to what you've got.
Okay, so I would close for an appointment there. So I want you guys to realize, that was a cold script, right? And Sheldon was playing a little bit hard in the beginning, right? What kind of time do you have? And what I want you to notice is instead of me quickly trying to sell him, instead, I switched it around and I became interested in him and learning more about his brokerage, right? If you've ever heard this expression that people don't care what you know until they know that you care, in order for me to properly diagnose if Sheldon is a fit for us, I need to know who Sheldon is, right? And what he revealed was that he was open to expansion, but I knew, because I also understood brokerages, that he wouldn't be able to do that with his current model. And so I have a solution for him. So in fact, I then went and closed for an appointment. All right, I'm going to share one last story and then we're going to have to wrap because we're at our 30 minutes. I had the opportunity to interview Veronica Figueroa. She runs a team out of Orlando, Florida. She had been a successful RE/MAX franchise. And when I say successful, I would say that she built a organization from one, herself, to 37 agents in 8.5 years. And then she sold her franchise for $40,000. She didn't net 40 because she had to pay RE/MAX and transfer fees. But so that was her experience there. She joined us, but here's the incredible thing, because Dan had asked, what do I do if I don't have somebody that I know, like, and trust? Well, you know what she did? She went to and aligned with her number one competitor in her market, which happened to be a guy named Gil Ramos. And they had never personally met. Okay, can you imagine? They knew of each other, obviously. They were arch rivals, but they had a healthy competition. And so they ended up meeting, and you know what? They ended up launching together. And they had an unbelievable launch. And in 15 months, they've now built an organization of 754 agents. So, in other words, choose not to have limiting beliefs. If you, what I would encourage you to do is think about who would be the most amazing person on the planet with whom I could be in business with and help take advantage of this opportunity. Okay, don't worry about the fact that they don't know you. Okay, just think about who would be the best fit. And one of us, and if your particular sponsor is not available, then reach out to me. I'll help you. Let's say it's an independent brokerage like Sheldon. Just realize that you've got this company of folks that want to help and collaborate. Brent has this saying, one team, one dream, and it is so true. I've never seen this level of support and collaboration in the real estate industry. And I thought I was at a company with great culture, but it's another level. Okay. And maybe it's because we all own stock in the same company. Maybe it's because we realize that we're on a path that's going to enable us freedom and an exit strategy. I'm not sure. Maybe it attracts really good people. But it's true. And I want you to think big. I want you, if you're here, it's because you want to do attraction. And just think about, again, the best possible people that you could attract to our company. And if we can keep them in due diligence, then they'll join you, and then we'll all be the better for it. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. Rob, do you need anything else for us before we close up?
Nope, that was great. Thank you, Don.
Okay. All right, everybody. If we did not answer all of your questions, you can reach out to us through eXp Workplace, and we'll be happy to provide any additional assistance, and wish you well. And I do want to mention, by the way, my team, we meet in eXp World Meeting Room 1 every Wednesday, 9 a.m. Last week, as I told you, I interviewed Veronica Figueroa. This week, we're going to be doing role-playing objections for personal productivity business. Tom Daves, who was the #1 KW agent in the world 7 times, is going to be one of the speakers. Yes, it's 9 a.m. Pacific time in Meeting Room 1. And so you're welcome to come and join us. And it is always a good learning experience. And it's Wednesday, by the way. So Wednesday, every week, 9 a.m. to 9:30 Pacific, Meeting Room 1. All right, you guys have an awesome day. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.